Hello, I'm Bob Bradley. This is THE 101, Introduction to Theater and Drama Arts. My guest today is Dr. Blackwood, who is a scenic designer, but also for many years served in the function of being the manager for the Summer Tent Theater. And we're going to talk to him today about the special problems of being a manager and being the producer then for tent theater. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. He also, while he was teaching in the department, taught a course in theater management. So at this point, we want to take that which you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That which you remember about theater management, then you can use, and we can use the summer tent as the specific guinea pig we're talking about. What were the special challenges that you found in managing summer tent theater?
Oh, well, it's quite different than most other types of theater in that you have the venue, of course, is outside, which, of course, is your first problem. Trying to make sure that you don't have storms coming through and doing anything bad, at least, for the audience. And so you do worry about that, and that is one of your major worries, which you usually don't have when you're in a venue that is not outside in a tent. So that's the first thing. Actually, as manager of the tent, you have a bunch of balls that you keep in the air, and you keep trying to keep them all in the air so they don't fall. And the weather certainly is one of the balls that you have to be careful about.
Okay, and let's go through the others then. What else can you come up with?
Well, of course, you then you do have a company of actors who you have problems, one thing or another, and you try to keep track of the problems and that they have personally, quite often, that can affect the show itself. And so you try to take care of that. The scheduling is another thing that, particularly in tent, usually, quite often management deals with one show, just one show. This time you're dealing with a season that has 3 shows, and the 3 shows, in the case of the tent, are in repertory. And repertory means that you do one show one night, and the next night you do another show, and the third night you do a third show, and then you start repeating that again and again. Or some pattern like
it's a rotation pattern.
Exactly. So you are dealing with sets that you have to make sure are okay. At least you have somebody dealing with sets, and hopefully you're not doing it, but as the manager. But sometimes you have to be careful about that and do it yourself. So it is a different type of format than you have dealing with just one show. It's a wonderful format, and people learn a great deal from it, but it still is one that does give you problems at times. Now, in the tent, probably the third thing that you do is try to make at least a portion of your money through selling stuff. It becomes in the tent almost like a circus. In fact, people have told me that the ambiance really in the tent is such that a serious show really is not probably what you want because nothing else is serious about it.
We have done a few, and I think learned our lessons and abandoned them long ago.
Yes, because the whole ambiance is more like a circus than something serious. So.
And in fact, the current, I have no idea how many years now, but pretty much the selections have been 2 musicals and 1 comedy, or if not a comedy, at least something else that bordered along. That was a lighter line anyway. Yeah.
We don't do Medea in the summer. And quite often we even go farther with that formula by going to a small musical and a large musical. And of course, what you can do with the large musical is get everybody involved, and a lot of our audience really like the big musical. And then you can use a small musical with a limited number of performers. And then, of course, the non-musical quite often is a small cast, but not always. Sometimes it's a fairly large cast. But this gives your company a chance to try their acting skills in the big musical and perhaps a large comedy or whatever. And that's what they're there for. Our company is really made up of student actors, for the most part. Now, sometimes
Or
we have
young actors,
yes,
in most cases, whatever that may be.
learning their trade is what
Right.
they're doing, and so of course you try to give them this possibility. The one thing we do to a certain extent anyway, is that quite often they're involved with many different aspects of the shows. And we've split up a little bit more now, where a technician quite often doesn't appear on stage because they're learning their trade in the technical areas, whereas the actors then have experience sometimes working in the technical areas as well as the performance areas. They also get experience, of course, in front of house, and that's another thing that you have to be careful about.
Maybe you should explain what front of house means.
Front of house, right.
Okay.
It deals with everything that's in front of the proscenium or in front of the curtain. So that means that your seating, your box office, all this type of thing deals with the front of house. And you try, obviously, to make everybody comfortable. You try to take care of any problems with sound. We have a major problem with sound in the tent because we're on the main line between St. John's and Cox and wherever else in the vicinity they're going to. So we have these sirens that the actors learn very quickly that you sort of hold for sirens in that theater, and that again is a kind of a rare occurrence. Very rarely do you teach actors to hold for sirens, but we do. And it is something they learn. It's, again, something very good for them to learn, that sometimes you can't just blunder right on through because there's something happening out in the audience.
And then there are the katydids, and you just have to drown them out.
Right, you can't wait on the katydids.
Right.
No. But there are other things that happen in the tent that usually don't happen in other areas. So again, it's you learn to think on your feet a great deal. The actors do. It works well for them. But anyway, the front of the house is what you learn, the box office and that type of thing. We have a number of different ways of earning money in the tent. Each one has come on as a sort of a new idea, and then it's gotten so popular, I don't think we've ever deserted any ideas.
Just keep adding.
Just keep adding, and pretty soon we started with sodas, with drinks of one type or another.
Concession stand.
Concession
yes,
stand type of thing, and so then that went in. I think the next thing we had was ice cream, which or frozen custard,
Right,
really.
yeah.
And that was very, very popular. And we went to popcorn because we had a popcorn machine donated. So we went to popcorn, and of course that's been around now for 10 years or so. And we have fans, so we sell the advertisements on the fans, and then people can fan themselves when it's a warm night. And
We have T-shirts.
T-shirts.
Do you have any idea where the T-shirt started?
I've got the earliest one, and I think it was in the 70s. It was an early, middle 70s.
Originally, the T-shirt was for the company.
Exactly.
They were printed, and then at some point, people in the audience began seeing them and wanted them, and so we went into the T-shirt business.
As a matter of fact, the very first year we had T-shirts for the tent company,
Right.
and everybody said, "Where can I get one of those?" And we thought, "Aha!" So we started selling T-shirts too. We'll sell anything that's not nailed down, of course, just about.
Yeah.
So you have all these concessions that you keep track of, and you have to have people in the company taking care of them, and some quite often they're very proud about taking care of their concessions. And we also have chances on dinners, because we get dinners donated from restaurants
Various
and
local restaurants.
and we sell chances on that. And at the end of the summer, of course, we read off the people who won the dinners. There's also at one of a bed and breakfast. We added that not too many years ago, where you could have a weekend at the bed and breakfast. That was a nice little prize, a type of raffle, I guess, where you could buy chances on that. I'm just trying to think of all the other things that we've done. Can you think of anything else?
I think we've just about gone through, at least at this point, everything that we were selling as of the the beginning of the 21st century.
Yeah.
But anyway, who knows what will be added?
I think we haven't added much lately. I don't think we've added anything in the last 7 or 8 years, but there will be something, I'm sure. I'm not sure what it'll be, but I'm sure we will add something. And that again, well, that is a part quite often of management. Maybe not as extensive as we do it. They usually have a concession stand, something like that. But ours is a little more involved because we have so many things that we sell and so many people selling them in several different locations. So.
Well, however, if one, these days, especially in the Broadway shows, if one goes, especially to the Disney ones, by the time you enter the theater building at the beginning of the lobby, there's just stand after stand, all of which are selling, at each stand, some kind of merchandise connected with that particular production. And so, no, that has become...
It's not different from Branson either. All the theaters in Branson do the same thing. So.
That has become one of the ways, in fact, in which a particular production makes a profit. And the company or the investors who are backing it will also get some return from all of the concessions and all the other merchandise that surround that particular production.
That's very true. And it's very important to the tent because that's where we get a great deal of our money to pay for.
I guess I'm glad you mentioned that, and that is we should at least say all of this goes for a good cause.
Yeah, it's for the...
It all goes into scholarships.
Everything's in scholarships, and of course almost everybody now is on scholarship.
Right.
That's in the tent. It's almost a requirement that you're paid by scholarships that way. Right. And then we do have a number of wonderful people who do contribute to that, and you have to make sure that you've included their names in the programs, of course, or any type of advertisement. If you have anyone sponsoring the show, you make sure that you get their names before the public because they have given you this money to make the show possible. So that's front of the house too. That's managed, part of the management too.
Well, you mentioned, and maybe we should, and I'm sure many audience members certainly never think of it. They are handed a program when they walk in, and that is there's a great deal of preparation and work that goes into that program.
Yeah, the program we try, the advertising that's in the program is there for a very good reason, and that is to pay for the program.
Pay for all the costs
associated with the program, yeah. So, and we do that. We've always been, I guess not always, but at least the last few years, we've been able to pay for the program and have been able to provide a program that's quite large and has lots of pictures and stuff in it because of the people who advertise in it. There are places where you pay for, London, you can pay for programs.
Right, but not in this country.
Yeah, usually they're free here,
right.
Unless you get the fancy ones, of right. course. But
yes, the souvenir.
Souvenir programs you pay for. We haven't gone there yet, but we may.
But then there's also all of the just the gathering of the information that one has to put together, that has to go into the program, and that has to go into the program accurately.
Yes, and very quickly, too. So trying to be accurate and quick at the same time is sometimes a problem. And we usually find we were not completely accurate. We usually find something we've missed, when we get through. But we try to keep it to a minimum. And of course you have to gather, first of all the advertisements that are going to pay for the program itself. You have to get people interested, the people who come to the shows are interested in the actors and the technicians, in who is doing the show and who they're seeing on stage and a little bit about them. So it's very important that you have that. And then pictures, whatever pictures you have of the tent company or of individuals in it, of course, you have to have those pictures taken and developed and then put up into the program. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into the program. It's an important part of it. Mm-hmm. And speaking of which, the whole season idea is one that you start with very early, trying to decide what shows you're going to do. So this again is a management problem that you deal with directors who have favorite shows, and you try to see which ones you can put together and come up with a season that makes sense.
In fact, usually that process will begin somewhere about the 1st of November, somewhere about mid-fall, in order to
7 or 8 months ahead of when you really put it on, you have to get some idea of what you're doing in order to make sure that they fit. There are shows that won't fit together, that are heavy on women maybe, or heavy on men, and so you try to figure out how you're going to be able to do the show or the shows together and make them fit. And then once you get the shows ready, you also think through a theme to try to have some type of a theme that makes the season so that you can advertise it, which again is a part of management, because you have to make sure that the audience knows what you're doing, and you try to have it look like it's going to be interesting. And so you have brochures that go out, which have to be planned ahead of time, have lots of printing there, and brochures or handouts, flyers, all sorts of that type of thing, as well as radio ads and television ads, where the audience knows that we're here and we're doing these shows. And so you try to get all that information out to them and what dates the shows are on, and that, again, is a part of management.
Let's back up and go all the way back to at least a kind of beginning, because I'm sure many people, well, certainly people realize, those who are on the campus, that there's this concrete pad out there. And then there is a point at which this concrete pad is transformed. But that's not something that happens miraculously or even easily.
No.
So let's go all the way back. Okay, the concrete pad is there. Now what happens when we...
There was a time before the concrete pad was there, too.
Right, but the concrete pad's been there since 68 or 9.
9, no, they put it in 9. We went, Craig Hall was built in 68, and we had it in 69,
right.
So.
But anyway, that concrete, so let's go all the way back. What happens in the preparation for making that transformation?
Well, first of all, you have to make sure that your tent is in repair. So we have a new tent about every 7 years. So by the time you get to the 5th or 6th year, you take a look at it and see how well it's doing, whether it's going to withstand that. And then you have to prepare getting a new tent at least a year or so ahead of the time that you're going to need it, probably more like 2 years ahead. They're not inexpensive. Tents are not inexpensive, and they've gotten more expensive as the years have gone on. But again, they do last. You amortize it over the seasons.
Right.
So
I think these days, well, you could probably figure a new tent is about, well, round figures, 25,000.
yes,
will probably
when we
come.
first got it, they were under 10, but
Right.
now they're about
They're
25.
So this is an expensive item that we're
is.
talking about.
I think the tent we're using now is about 5 years old, 4 years old, maybe 5. So it's got a couple more years before it just wear and
maybe
tear.
longer, because this is the one we switched to vinyl,
Yes,
and this is the
we had vinyl before, but
Did we have one vinyl
we had
before-
one vinyl
before the cloth?
Before the
Okay.
cloth, yeah. So we started with cloth. We started with canvas. Canvas wears out a little faster than does the vinyl, I think. If it's stored properly is the whole thing. And you do have to make sure that it's stored properly, and we do have a company that does store most of the parts of the tent. But we have parts of the tent that we keep here on campus. Parts of the tent are kept at the storage
I guess
unit.
by parts, you are referring to the things that go inside the tent, not the tent itself.
Well, the pegs, for
Right.
example, the tent pad has holes that have screws in it that you put pegs into, and then you can tie the tent down that way. And I think the poles, well, no, I don't. I think the poles go back to the company.
The poles usually, I think, go back.
Yeah.
And we do have a program called the Physical Theater, and a part of that particular program will be visiting the tent. So some of this can be seen visually at some later point in time. Yes, right.
Well, you have to make sure it takes a fairly large number of people to put the tent up, you have to have a way of getting the main pole up. You can't just drag it up. You have to have some type of mechanical means to get it up, because it's quite heavy and it goes up in the air, and it's really the major thing that holds the tent together. You put a pole up and you pull ropes in different directions from that pole, and that's the way it stays. And so you do have to have that way of getting it up, and a great number of people to put in the pegs and to take ropes and tie them around the pegs until you get the structure completed. So you actually every summer build your theater too, as well as perform in it. You also build it, and that means you build the stage too.
That's right. You have to start then moving everything in.
Right, and you build the audience area too. So everything is built. It's just a flat area out there of concrete, and so what you do is you actually build your theater.
Actually, I guess we should say these days I think all of those structures are now in a folding or in a storage situation, so that they can be taken down, removed, put into storage, and then at a later point brought out of storage and put up again. So we don't build them anew. We don't build them anew every year.
We used to have it with platforms that folded out and stuff. Now pretty much we're going with large units that are trusses, that then you go between trusses. But they're both of them basically are the ability to store units that you can put together to make a large structure. So that's, no matter how you do it, that's what you're doing.
Then everything else has to be, that is, that's the foundation, the stage, the risers on which to sit, but then everything else has to come too.
You've got the seats, you've got fans, because we've gotten very used to ceiling fans, and they're a wonderful invention, and they do some good in the tent at night.
Do you remember the year? In fact, as I remember, it was your idea, a rather brilliant one. You put in one row of fans in the tent.
Yeah.
I don't even know when, except I remember when I know it happened.
And everybody wanted those seats.
That's right. And so now we've added, I don't know.
Everywhere now.
Yeah, right.
We used to have problems. Well, we used to have fans in the top of the tent, but now we've got them pretty much everywhere above the audience, and it works so well. Part of it is that the fans that they have developed through the years have gotten quieter and quieter, which is, you have to have the quietness. And so we used to have a big bank of fans that we'd blow the air out at intermission, but they were so noisy you couldn't leave them on.
Yeah.
So so the ceiling fans are really ideal for the tent, and I don't know how many we have now, but like 15 or 20, I don't know. There are a lot of them.
And then, of course, all the lights. Everything has all the lights and all the equipment to control the lights.
That's true. And we do have, when we built the tent pad, we built a source of energy. So we do have the electrical power coming out of Craig Hall and going into an underground type, under the tent, type of place where you can attach to a company switch, which is what that's called, a company switch, where you go into a theater, you attach to a power source. And so that's what we do with our dimmers, and the dimmers sit backstage, and then the control of the dimmers then are run to the other side, to the back of the audience. So it's the whole length of the tent that those run in order to be controlled up there. You don't want to control from backstage because you can't see what you're doing. So we run those in and then hang lights everywhere. There are lights coming from all directions, of course.
And then I suppose, as in fact, actually as the case almost any theater production, then even the newest item is now sound and control of sound in some way.
The other interesting thing is that we try to store as much as possible of the other two shows in the back part of the tent.
Once the sets are designed and once we go into production, then obviously there's going to be one production sitting out front on stage, and now
most of the other two productions are stored backstage. Sometimes there are large units that can't be stored there and they're stored in the building, but again, almost everything is stored backstage. And which brings us to a point, the designer of the shows, and we've gone almost always with one designer because of this very good reason, that you have to be able to store all three sets, and so the designer can design all three shows so that two of them will sit in back while one of them's in front, and use as much as possible materials from all three.
And as a producer, this is certainly one of your major concerns, and that is working with the designer to be sure that the designer understands.
Yes, I have never, and I don't think we have ever hired a designer who hasn't been intent or at least knows it intimately. Yeah. And you have to do that with this case. I don't know that you have to with most theaters, but you sure do with the tent, because it has different little things that don't occur anywhere else, that the designer has to take care of and has to figure out how to solve the problem. So we have problems with scenery in the tent that you don't have anyplace else.
Right, but and that is that there is this this storage problem, which in fact very few theaters these days even operate on any kind of repertory system. I suppose the opera world is almost the only place that there's any kind of major repertory system left where they may be doing, well, there are of course some theaters in England and the Stratford Festival in Canada, which will have a number of productions going all at one time. But this is a very special problem.
The Lort theaters now are quite often sharing productions. So quite often they will build a set that will fit in one show in Milwaukee and also St. Louis and also, you know, Concord or wherever they go with it, but it will fit those units. So they'll take it, put it in an 18-wheeler and take it out and do the show then at one of the other Lort theaters. Right. That's League of Residence Theaters. Right. So you're probably going to cover that some of the time.
Well, all right. Now, as the producer, then you were talking about that you had to be very much aware of the actors, well, any problems that the company might have, the company being including anyone who would be working, actors, technicians, whatever. What kinds of problems, personal problems, but what else? What do you try to
Of course,
work
you try
with
to keep them healthy. That is very important, that you keep your company healthy. And you deal through other people. You don't necessarily do all this yourself. You have a company manager, a stage manager who takes care of, who knows more about what's going on with the actors. Now, quite often your directors are responsible for this in the beginning. Then quite often they are not there after that. But you do have stage managers who are really responsible for knowing how the actors are doing, if they have problems and so forth. And they will try to solve it themselves, and if they can't, they come to you. And you have to solve it.
Maybe because this is a management problem, and it's something that I know I haven't covered at any point. Okay, who is a stage manager, and what does the stage manager do? Because it relates directly to the producer.
Well, it does, because the producer really works with the stage manager on Broadway.
So what is a stage manager?
A stage manager is God for a show. They are the one who works with the director, makes sure that they know what the director wants, writes it down, goes to the actors. They're sort of a work. They work with all the actors as well as the director, so they know exactly what's happening. They know the show better than anybody else, including the director. Yeah. And they are the people who also know what's going on with scenery, what's going on with lights, everything involved with a production they know. Once the show gets started, once it starts running.
Well, I guess maybe one way of thinking about it, and that is during the work process, during the rehearsal process, in many ways, the stage manager is the communicator, the communication facilitator.
Right, because you may be building or doing things in many different areas, so that therefore the stage manager is the one who says, that couch is going to be too short if you aren't careful. Make sure it's wider than that, because the director now has 3 people sitting on it. you know.
Right.
So
Right.
there are all sorts of communications that a good stage manager will take the problems out of. But they really are, they're God as far as that's concerned, as far as the person who really knows the show, who really runs the show. They're the ones who run the show. When you, on Broadway, when you get through with a show starting, the director and the designers all work together to get the show started. The show starts, and then it's in the hands of the stage manager.
Yeah, that artistic personnel usually is gone.
Yeah.
May or may not ever show up again, although...
Well, they're off doing something else.
Right. And so at that point, the stage manager takes over. And literally from that point forward, the way the production looks, sounds, the keeping it at an artistic level, all lies with the stage manager.
They take out what are called improvements. Sometimes actors have a way of adding lines and doing things, and so that's what the stage manager does. I love that expression about taking out improvements.
Yeah. But yes, in the professional theater, the stage manager does really become the most one, if not the most important person, certainly the most important person in keeping the production on an even keel.
Yeah. And because of that responsibility, of course, they're very important to knowing what the actors are doing and how they're doing it. If they have problems, they go quite often to the stage manager, and the stage manager then will try to solve it or come to your managing director.
Right. Yeah. So so really the stage manager again becomes the link. Once the production begins, the stage manager becomes the link between what is on stage and the producer. And the producer at this point is mostly out front.
Yes, yes, the producer but they're the ones who talk.
Right.
Is the stage manager talks to the producer and says, okay, we need this or we need that or the other thing. But they don't go to the director then. They don't go to anyone but except the producer.
Right. The producer at that point is now worrying as he or she always has to, is worrying about the money and is worrying about the box office. How are the receipts coming in? How are the receipts, how well are the receipts meeting the expenses that are needed here? And so that's what the producer is worrying about. But now if something begins to affect the quality of the show, then the stage manager needs to get the producer and point this out. Yeah.
And the stage manager also is not responsible actually for hiring people, well, maybe minor roles, but he is responsible for getting them ready to go on stage.
Once they're in a long run Broadway production, and if somebody leaves, then the stage manager is responsible for at least rehearsing that replacement and getting that person ready to go on.
They know what the director was trying to do with the show, so therefore they try with the new person to do this as much as they can. So.
The attempt, or at least it is the hope, that one of the things, of course, that TENT does is to create for the students who are members of the company then this sort of professional-like situation to give them some idea in what is basically now about an 11-week from the time rehearsals begin till the last performance is about a span of between 11 and a half to 12 weeks. Yeah. So in that span of time to find out what it's like to be in a professional situation. But why then do you think that this has become so popular and such a tradition with the Springfield public? That is, we have some very special educational benefits that we hope to give the students through this, but now why has it become special for the public?
Well, I think quality is one of the major reasons. We've always had, well, we've had a couple clingers, but
well, I can think of
a couple.
I can think of some, but yes, okay.
But for the most part, they have been excellent productions. Yes, we try.
Yes, we ignore those.
But
I've done some of them myself. So.
I remember one.
Yes, well, I can remember more than one, but anyway.
But at any rate, for the most part, they really are excellent productions. And I think the one thing that we keep year to year is the enthusiasm within the actors. There's no, you won't find a bored actor up there. They all are enthusiastic about doing their best and trying to learn their craft as they're intent. So that is the one thing you will never find, as far as I know, somebody who is boring. And unfortunately, that does happen in some professional companies where I have done this 200 times, and here I'm going to do it again, you know. But that doesn't happen.
And you mentioned early on, and certainly I think for the audience, it is a very special ambience that's there.
And they're right close to the audience, and they play off each other. It's just wonderful.
So it has become something that the Springfield public now for 40 or more years has enjoyed, and we hope will continue to enjoy for a long time to come, because it does create a special educational situation, but then also allows us to showcase for the Springfield public. Right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We are finishing out this hour with a second guest. In this case, it is Mark Templeton, who is the Marketing and Promotions Director for the SMS Theater and Dance, which includes Tent Theater. And so we are going to talk to him about how one markets and what does it mean and what are the special problems and challenges that one has with summer tent theater. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. So why don't you explain to us what does marketing and promotions mean? What do you do?
Well, in the sense of tent, we're literally just marketing to the masses, because tent is so well known around the community of Springfield that basically when someone says they want to go to the theater, specifically tent theater, they usually don't say the title of the show. They say, we're going to tent theater tonight. They don't say the show, and that's all because of the positive environment and the positive the positive look the way the tent has around this, the Springfield community. And so, number one, what marketing entails for this community is that you've got to communicate with your previous season ticket holders very quickly and very soon. And that comes from the development of a brochure. That's the first task that I look at as far as the title of the plays that we have, and then we put an umbrella or a titling around those plays. It varies from year to year. They're usually very humorous in nature, because that's what tent is. It's a fun experience, and that's what we try to make it. But we take...
Okay. We talked earlier with Dr. Blackwood about choosing the season, and so you want the season chosen as early and as quickly as possible.
Well, certainly, the easier it's selected, the easier my job is. But sometimes that's not the case. But more time does give me more of an opportunity to develop a firm plan.
So you've got to take these three titles that are given to you, and now you have to figure out, how do you sell them?
Yeah.
How do you market them?
Yes. How do you
So you start with the brochure?
We start with the brochure, which that's an ongoing process with publications, and then through some network brainstorming, we develop that plan. We put the brochure together, and the first people that we want to get that brochure to are our previous season ticket holders, and that's to reward them with first option and first choice for shows, because our shows do tend to sell out, and our patrons are very fickle about what specific seat they want. And so a lot of times we'll send that brochure out and we'll get responses immediately. And so that's very important to them. The second wave that we actually do is we then look at the possible demographics for the specific year, and who else might be interested in attending tent. And of course we maintain several mailing lists through our box office. And we just get a general layout of all of those people who have attended theatrical events certainly those people who are involved in Juanita K as ticket holders, we certainly send information to them hoping that they'll be interested in our program. And then beyond that, then we get into some very specific targeted marketing campaigns, which sometimes involves postcards. Of course, we have sponsorships with other organizations within the community that we network with their clientele in getting information out. But in a nutshell, tent is so famous within this community that simply you just have to say the word tent theater and you have people calling you. And a lot of times we have people actually giving us a phone call when it's a month before that brochure gets out. They're so eager to get those.
You mentioned early on, and I think it's one of the things that needs to be reiterated here, and that is that one of your responsibilities, I guess, or certainly one of the ways which you have, in which you can begin to think in terms of how successful you are, is how well do you know your local community? You've got to know to whom you are selling. You've got to know whom you are targeting. So how have you done that? What kind of work or background preparation have you done for acquiring knowledge about your community?
Well, of course, the first thing is just simply going out and talking to our patrons on a year in and year out basis. You know, we find out who these people are, how they learned about tent in the box office. One way that we do each year that we find out where our populace is coming from is that they do ask them questions on occasion. Where did you hear about tent theater? And then we secure that information and hopefully that is giving us a hint on where we need to go. And of course, you know, if a person is new to the community, there are certain community organizations that go out and meet people for the first time in kind of a welcoming unit to Springfield. And of course, we give information to them that lets them know about our specific event that we have for the summer. We're the exclusive outdoor entertainment per se in Springfield for the summer that's on a day in and day out basis, especially in July. And so those are two ways and two areas that we actually, you know, we go out and we seek. And of course, a word of mouth is very good around the Springfield area in this case. But basically, in a nutshell, beyond that's specifically going to those new people, we do maintain a relationship with the newspaper and find out from that regard on who is actually attending our performances within the genre of who's reading that newspaper. They're telling us, you know, in the box office, that's where we found out about this information, and then just learning about those patrons when they actually visit the tent.
And then, of course, that's one of the reasons why, at least in most cases, although there may be a few evenings not, but you are nearly always present every time before the show begins to be out front. You are there maybe overhearing, listening to the comments as the audience comes in.
Oh yes, one area that specifically is fun to watch, and it's good to, you know, like you're right, I'm always visible and always walking through, and I encourage all of our marketing staff to currently, you know, to walk through and listen and help patrons. But one specific place that it is very, it's very interesting to listen is when patrons go by. We usually have a display of the history of tent in our lobby, and it's always interesting to go by those patrons and watch them point out previous seasons that they attended this. Remember this person, remember that person. You know, and if they went to last year, they always check to see if they're going to see somebody this year that they saw last year. And so that's always an interesting to watch. And then on occasion...
But that also tells you something.
Yeah.
I mean, as a marketing director, that tells you something about who that audience is.
Yes, it's
you're learning something.
Sure, we are.
You stick it away in the back of your mind.
Yeah, we stick it away, and we're learning that we have this season patron over and over and again. It's repeat patron, and of course, when that happens, and then we get somebody new into the lobby, of course, they're seeing that history for the first time. And there's something that about the way we display those items that just pulls people in, and they look and they start to realize that what they will experience that evening is something unique and something that's been done at this point, at the time we're taping this, for 40 years. And so then there's a nostalgia kind of feel about what they will experience, or that they hope to, in some cases, it's so new to them. Outdoor theater is, for the most part, that it's a welcoming experience to them.
So in some ways, this knowing that you have a great deal of repeat audience, that is, or people who return here, then anytime you begin marketing, you think in terms of immediately marketing and tying them into that past connection.
We certainly do that, the past connections, and on occasion we will repeat a show intent. And there was an occasion from a marketing standpoint that I was really interested to see what show that people really did enjoy, before. And there was one year that I actually put up a display of photos of different shows with no titles on them, and said, "Do you remember when? Do you remember this show?" And we would have people write these comments down about this show. This was so-and-so, this was that show. We love this production. And in fact, a couple of years ago, we did bring back a production that we had done before in the tent that people had recognized as something they really did enjoy and would like to see again. And that's just getting some feedback from your patrons there. In fact, we have also brought back specific people with purely in my mind because a person made a comment during that same time period. We have an alumni, I don't know, his name is Paul Blankenship. I don't know if we've had him on the program or not, but something was written down, bring back Milton Paul Blankenship to the tent. And I remember that, and I remember mentioning that to one of the other operational staff members that he might be somebody we would want to bring back into the tent. But it's important to those patrons to hear them and listen to them and see what they want to see. And that way it makes the marketing job much easier.
In this particular kind of way, this is where there's very much a parallel between tent theater and the whole resident regional theaters across the country, in that the intent is we belong to the community. We are a part of the community, and what we are seeking then is the continual support of the community, so that the tent situation is very much a parallel here with the establishment of a permanent theater company within the community, whereas a touring company comes in and is here maybe a week, maybe whatever the period of time is, but they move on. But in our case, we are going to be here again next year, and there's going to be tent theater in another year, and so we very much build on that kind of marketing and promotions. Mm-hmm. What other kind of special challenges do you have in trying to market the tent theater?
Well, specifically with tent, you have to overcome the element of how hot it could or could not be. And so you have to do things that bring comfort to your audience members in saying, well, it's a nice, beautiful night, it may not be so bad out there in the hot tent. But we obviously do some things that try to help out along those lines. We of course we put fans and everything else into the tent, but that is mentioned on several occasions that a lot of people are concerned about the heat. But for some reason, that's one reason why people come back to the tent. There's somewhat of a challenge, maybe for some to come back and do it one more time. And we've had patrons who have done this for every year since the very beginning, and it's just like, yes, I have made it through one more year. And those patrons are the ones that are really neat to visit with.
Well, of course, what we have here is that most evenings in Springfield usually can be fairly comfortable. There are always going to be those 2 or 3 evenings in which there's nothing one can do except suffer. And when it happens, and for whatever the audience may think they're suffering, I assure them the ones on stage are suffering even more. And I think they realize that. And I think everybody sort of just takes the whole situation in stride.
Yeah, that really becomes a good night that we sell our fans that they can fan themselves with. We really do well on those nights.
Okay. Well, Mark, thank you very much, and I appreciate your being here and talking about marketing and the promotion, and you have given us information which is very helpful. Thank you.